Welcome to End Time Talk Radio, where the truth is usually stranger than fiction. The purpose of these shows are not to scare you, but to prepare you, because what you don't know could hurt you. The word says in Hosea 4:6, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." Thank you for joining us. My name is Julie, and here is the host of the show, Barry Meyer.
Welcome to End Time Talk Radio. We have a great show. We have Bart Sibrel coming up. Before we get to him, I want to mention a few things. In Defense of a Nation, Stephen and Stan Grant, Michael McCune, 30 minutes of Liberty's assault on tyranny. Definitely check that out. I'm going to play the little clip here.
In defense of a nation, one nation, under one God. Today's headlines, tomorrow's events. Stay with us for a biblical perspective of the news, and it all begins in 20 seconds.
Check out Chris Walsh. If you're looking at moving to the American Redoubt, which is Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, definitely give him a call. I want to play his commercial, and then we'll go right back into Bart.
Greetings, Patriots. This is Chris Walsh, broker at Revolutionary Realty, located in the heart of America's Great Redoubt, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I sell land and backwoods cabins to America's Patriots every day. Creeks, springs, timber, and game, good survivable property without natural disasters. The state of Idaho has a balanced budget, and our people believe deeply in the Second Amendment. Call me today at 208-667-1776 or visit me online at www.revrealty.us. I'll be glad to serve you, and God bless America.
Welcome to End Time Talk Radio. I have a great show. Came across someone that had sent me an email, and I just told them, absolutely, come on. They had sent me an email about, I got some interesting things, and so I thought it was really interesting to have someone contact me and just talk about some things that they've been seeing. Now we have actually Bart Sibrel on. Now, if you want to find him, you want to go to thetruthjournal.com/conspiracy-corner. You'll find him right there. Now, he is an award-winning filmmaker, writer, investigative journalist who has been producing movies and television programs for 30 years. He has owned 5 production companies, been employed by 2 of the 3 major networks, and produced films shown on ABC, NBC, CNN, TLC, USA, BAT, and as well as The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He has appeared and have interviewed on The Daily Show with Geraldo, NBC, CNN, Fox, Tech TV, Coast to Coast AM with, you've listened to George Norrie. Mr. Sibrel has collected over years of numerous military, government, industrial, and private sources for credible first-hand verification of the real conspiratorial crimes against humanity. Brett, welcome to End Time Talk Radio.
Well, thanks for having me, Barry.
Yeah. Well, this has been definitely an interview I've been looking at having on. I'm really glad that you contacted me. You have a lot of good things on your website. Of course, it's not often I get somebody that's a filmmaker and that wants to come on and talk about some things they've been investigating. Maybe share a little bit about yourself beyond what I've just kind of mentioned, and let the people know more about yourself.
Well, I started out as a kid as an actor-playwright, and then I led into being a filmmaker. And then in the late 80s, I met a guy who worked for NASA, and he was in his 70s at the time. He said we didn't go to the moon.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like the biggest fan of the moon missions. I had pictures on my wall of the moon missions. And Paul went from being the greatest persecutor of Christians to being their leader. And I went from being the greatest fan of the moon missions to being the greatest critic. And he said in the late 80s that I should do a film about the moon missions being fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into it, and the shadows that should be parallel intersected, and the administrator of NASA resigned, and 2 of the 3 astronauts of the first mission refused to give interviews. And I thought, this is a little strange. And I'm kind of a relentless personality. And I knew that if anybody was going to uncover these stones about the moon landings being fake, it would be me.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing how I considered at least a 1 out of 4 chance of the moon landings actually being faked, I originally turned down the project.
Okay.
I figured I'm a liar, everyone's a liar. Why should I risk my life for someone else's folly?
Sure.
And I had a client who was a Christian piano player, and his wife suggested I read the 1-year Bible.
Okay.
And I got the Living Bible, and I started reading, I think it was June 3rd, 1989. The day when the guy stood with his grocery bags in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember that.
5 years went by, and I had read the Bible from cover to cover 5 times. And if you can imagine, you have a book written by Beethoven on how to play the piano, and you read it 5 times. But you're still probably not going to do that good of a job.
Sure.
Unless you have a piano teacher. See, half of Christianity is the doctrine. The Bible says, watch your life and your doctrine closely.
Mm-hmm.
The doctrine is the Bible, which I have. I read 5 times. But the life is a person helping you apply it, which I did not have.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it, and I realized there is a God, and there is right and wrong. I mean, without God, rape, murder, incest, war, debauchery, poisoning people, doesn't matter. Who cares, right? If there's no God, then there's no right or wrong, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
But Romans says that you can observe from nature that there is a God, that there is right or wrong. And I realized in 1989 when I had a guy who worked for NASA for 6.5 years. And he said, Bart, we did not go to the moon. And I turned down the project because I figured, I'm pretty relentless. I like puzzles. And if anyone could solve the mystery, whether we went to the moon or not, it would be me.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd like to have a wife and family someday. And if I start overturning these rocks, I could get into trouble. I could risk my life. And I know it was only a 1 out of 4 chance. But that's kind of big. No offense, Barry. But the cops came to me and said, Barry is a 1 out of 4 suspect in a homicide.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably keep my eye on you.
Yeah, most definitely, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the idea that the moon landings were a 1 out of 4 chance of being faked, I considered that too big, so I turned down the project. Then I read the Bible, the 1-year Bible. 5 times I read the Bible, 2,000 pages. I read it all the way through 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I'm going to die anyway. And if they didn't go to the moon, it's highly significant. Think about the Tower of Babel. The greatest event in human achievement at the time was architecture. How tall could you build a building without it collapsing on itself?
Yeah, you're probably maybe
and then I looked in the Titanic. The Titanic said the ship that God himself cannot sink. And then Nixon, and we know he is to be trusted. He said putting a man on the moon was the greatest event since creation itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized if they didn't go to the moon. This is very profound. For example, let's say they could go to the moon. Let's say they could go to the moon, put astronauts there, plant a flag, and do it. But let's say the other alternative is they couldn't go. And they lied about it. And they embezzled money, billions of dollars. And they murdered people to keep it a secret. So you have two possibilities. Either they really went or they lied about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if either of them could be true, faking the moon landing is more profound of an historic event than if they had actually gone.
Mm-hmm.
3.5 years into this film, I found proof that they really didn't go. A videotape of them faking the shot, unedited, right in front of your eyes. And I realized, oh my God, they really didn't go to the moon. I freaked out. I must have said, oh my God, about 100 times in 2 minutes.
Interesting. You know, one of the things that I hear about the moon landing is that they have to go through that radiation belt, and going through that, it would actually kill people.
Yeah, you have to realize that allegedly in 1969 they went to the moon, which goes through what is called the Van Allen radiation belt, which is about 300 miles to 25,000 miles above it. The only time in human history a human being has gone through the radiation was the Apollo moon missions. And they've never gone back since. Now, it's been, come July, 45 years since any human being on the planet has allegedly gone through the Van Allen radiation belt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I said I did cold fusion, and I said, hey, Barry, come back in 45 years, and I'll do it again for you.
Sure.
You would wonder why it would take 45 years before I could do it again.
Yeah.
If it was so easy, think about this. They were allegedly shooting golf balls on the moon with 1960s technology, and yet they cannot put a man on the moon today. Technology does not go backwards unless the moon landings are real.
Mm-hmm.
And we know technology does not go backwards. And it's this really hard thing. I mean, I don't know your mother, but let's say, Barry, I said, hey, before you were born, your mother killed 10 people with an axe. She buried them in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear about it. You don't want to know. It's too outrageous for you to even consider in your mind.
Yeah.
There's a psychological tactic that's working greatly in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wanted to believe that they went to the moon. And once they accepted that in their mind, it's hard to believe it was otherwise.
Sure.
I mean, let's say, Barry, I said, hey, come to this great restaurant, and I serve you a steak dinner, and a cockroach crawls across the steak while you're eating dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, a year or two from now, hey, let's go back to that restaurant. What do you remember? Do you remember the great steak or the cockroach?
The cockroach.
Exactly. But the point is that we burned in people's minds that the moon landing was real.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to unburn it is an incredible psychological barrier.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings even into the idea with what's happened with our money. I mean, people think there's value to our money, and it's been engrossed into us Well, like I listened to a guy today, a $20 coin back in 1913 would buy a nice suit. A $20 gold coin now will buy a nice suit. And people don't understand that the value of cash is lost, 98% of the value. I'm sorry for jumping off, but we've been trained in so many different things to be taught to think a certain way that you're inside this box.
Well, if I had to say one argument, Barry, why we didn't go to the moon, if we went to the moon in 1969, there would be bases on the moon now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, are they? The best they can do is send a robot the size of a microwave oven to the moon.
Yeah.
Because of radiation and various problems. And I hate to say it, I'm an American, but the American government, they really can't be trusted since the faking of JFK and Nixon and 9/11 and the moon landings. I mean, there are these bank robbers who have consistently got away with robbing the bank, and it just emboldens them to do more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if they're going to fake this whole thing with the moon landing, what would be the idea of the other hand? What were they doing to keep you looking from what the right hand was doing?
Well, what do you mean?
What I mean is, like, you set up a situation where a magician does a thing. Watch over here while you don't see what I'm doing over here. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what do you think they would have been doing on the other hand that they were wanting people not to see?
Well, all I can say is if you can imagine 1960s technology,
Mm-hmm.
which, there's about 100 times more computer technology with a $10 Walmart watch.
Yeah.
Than there is in what they went to the moon, allegedly, in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
If they really went to the moon, there would be bases there. There would be people there. There'd be all sorts of things going on, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Surely they knew it at the time. They knew at the time that they would be temporarily, getting away with it, and eventually they would be caught.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, Nixon and everyone assumed it would be after they were dead. So good for them.
Yeah.
You're right. It is after they're dead.
I just think it's interesting. Why would they put so much into all this? I would just think that if the whole thing is going to be faked, they had to be doing something else on the other side. They're like, don't watch us do such and such over here. Watch this big thing. We'll make a big TV show, watch it on TV, but we're doing something else over. I almost wonder if it'd be like a cover-up.
Well, people wanted to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have a love, your spouse, that you love with all your heart, they can do nothing wrong.
Sure.
And I think the psychological tactics they used were incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Because once that psychological tactic is of they're on the moon, you can never accept that they weren't. You believed it. You saw it on TV. And it's so hard to convince otherwise.
Yeah, people will believe what's on TV. They don't even question it.
Yes, I believe it because I saw it on TV.
Well, and I think you make a very good point with the technology. I think that's something to be said and to people look at, because you say, like, with the watch, with the Walmart watch, it has more technology in it now than we had back in the 60s. So people still would not question that. They would think, well, we did go to the moon. But when you bring up these other ideas, people want to kind of push that to the side and say, well, that didn't happen because I was told that.
Well, you got to look at, Columbus coming to America, 1496, and then Lewis and Clark going west, and there was constant expansion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no expansion going to the moon.
Sure.
And half a century,
Yeah.
all this greater technology.
Yeah, and now China's just putting something up on the moon, so they say. Here last week, was it?
Well, China?
Yeah, I think they said they put something up on the moon, and I think they want to put like a robot up here in the next couple of years and do some things. Like you said, I think it's very interesting that we don't have any bases up in there. But let me ask you this. Let me kind of diverge a little bit and kind of maybe throw this. Okay, if the moon doesn't spin like the Earth does, do you think there could be something on the other side of the moon?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Well, do you think there might be some on the backside of the moon that we're not seeing?
No.
Okay.
That's a big con. That's a big, big lie.
Yeah.
All these UFO junk, there are no UFOs.
Yeah.
If you read Revelation 21:3,
Mm-hmm.
it says, when there's a new heaven and a new earth, God will dwell with us.
Yes.
Now, if God is not a respecter of persons, which the Bible says,
Mm-hmm.
and there's life on other planets, then if he dwells with us, he's disrespecting them, isn't he?
True. Very true.
The only way he cannot disrespect them is if we are in it.
Mm-hmm.
NASA scientists say, how could there possibly be life nowhere else, and yet only here?
Mm-hmm.
That's an assumption, but there could be if we are God's chosen people made in his image. The Bible says, Revelation 21:3, God will dwell among his people.
That's a very
for
good
all
point.
eternity.
Very good point.
Exactly. Now, if he is not a respecter of persons, and there's life on other planets, and surely they have a better track record than we are, like Bart said, then he'd be disrespecting them.
True.
The only way he could dwell with us is if there is life nowhere else. Just because it seems improbable or ununderstandable doesn't mean it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible says he will dwell with us and no one else, which means we're it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we understand it or appreciate it or not.
Well, I think we're just told a lot of things that I'll agree with that are just not true. They sound like they could be true. They look like they could be true. But we've often found out the truth is usually stranger than the fiction we're being told.
So if the moon landings are fake, and we're told they're real, and Building 7 and 9/11, which seems a little odd to me, and I don't want to go into more than that, but
Sure.
that seems a little odd. Kennedy assassination. You know, like I said, when you rob a bank and you get away with it, you're emboldened to do more.
True.
They robbed the bank with Kennedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They robbed the bank with the moon landing. They robbed the bank with 9/11. They're just keep going along their merry way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the greatest thing right now is just what's going on with the finances. I mean, what happened with Cyprus here at the beginning of the year of 2013. You can't tell anybody that that's going to happen here. They said that can't happen to us.
What is that?
Well, what I'm saying is that people think that their finances are secure. The government told me that I'll have no problems. But they literally realize what happened in Cyprus will be happening here.
Well, they're going to do it the way they want to do it.
Sure, sure.
I'm sure they have it planned to the day and the hour.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that I seen in your site here which was pretty interesting, was we hear about it all the time, these comets. You know, of course, now this last comet came through, and people make a big hype of it. And the latest thing that you keep hearing about is even like Planet X, and they're saying, okay, all these earthquakes are because of this and that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, your listeners should go to the Sleuth Journal, then to Conspiracy Corner at the top right, then to the Planet X article.
Yeah.
A lot of information. And then to the download to the file. But unfortunately, Planet X is probably real.
You think so, really?
Yeah. Before I did the moon landing thing, I said there was a 1 out of 4 chance we didn't go to the moon, and it ended up being a 4 out of 4.
Okay.
And when I started looking into Planet X, I said there's at least a 1 out of 3 that Planet X is real. And as time goes on, I think it's more and more real.
Well, okay, let me throw this at you. I've often heard that Denver, Colorado, is going to be considered the new capital. And of course, that you hear about underground with DIA and different things like that. That if Planet X did come in, it would cause major tidal shifts. That actually DC would be totally gone. You've heard stuff like that before.
Well, that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of the government offices have moved to Denver. That's a fact.
Yes. So that being said,
if the New Madrid,
oh, go ahead.
I was saying if the New Madrid goes off and the Great Lakes open up to the Gulf, and that puts Denver right in the middle of the continental United States.
Very true. Okay, so this thing, we hear so much about it. How come, if it's going to be real, are we not being told about it because it's so real that they don't want to scare us?
Well, no, that's not it. They don't care to scare us or not. The Henry Kissinger and the, what is it called, the Atlantic Guidestones and all that junk and the Bill Gates,
mm-hmm.
They say the world would be a better place if about 5.5 to 6.5 billion of us just dropped dead.
True.
They don't want to go down in history as the next Hitler.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who would want such a reputation?
Sure.
So they're going to let Mother Nature, Planet X, do their dirty work for them.
Wow. What? Okay.
The one proof that the whole I remember being contacted 2 years ago by a guy who said, "What do you think, Bart, about the Denver being the new capital?"
Mm-hmm.
And the airport, which is like, 20 acres, but they bought 200 acres around it,
mm-hmm.
allegedly underground caverns.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, here's one way you can know. If the runway is one of the longest runways in the world. I found out a few days later it's got like the second longest runway in the world.
Oh, really?
Now the complex, the terminal building, if you will, is covered by a tent material.
Mm-hmm. I've been there.
Do you know what the tent material is made of?
I don't know.
No, it's made of Kevlar.
I was going to say that, but I wasn't sure.
Kevlar is one of the most expensive materials per square inch on the planet. And if they put it at an angle, which they did, it actually does it better. It covers more square footage because it's at an angle. Do you see?
Yes.
The Bible says there's going to be a plague of hail of 75 to 100 pounds. And they've covered the complex of the Denver airport with Kevlar, bulletproof material.
Hmm.
And I can't believe, this is, it's a fact. And yet, no one wonders why. Kevlar, one of the most expensive material on the planet,
Yeah.
is covering the complex of the Denver airport at an angle like a tent, which is better because as things come down, there's more square footage at an angle to cover and protect the complex underneath.
Well, that's just that's
Hailstone
wow.
of 75 to 100 pounds fall from the sky. Planet X is going to tilt the Earth more than likely by about 90 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
The Arctic air is suddenly going to appear above warmer climates. And all that atmosphere is going to freeze in a split second.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a minute or two. And it's going to fall from the sky. It's 75 to 100-pound hailstones.
So that would
They know this.
Oh, that would explain why the woolly mammoth and that would have froze instantly with food in their mouth.
Well, that's one of the previous encounters, probably at Planet X, yes.
Interesting. Now, this has been, 3,600 years it takes to come around.
It's probably not 3,600.
Okay.
It's probably more like 360.
Okay.
The people have miscalculated the decimal point. Of course, the solar system is huge, and most of the previous passings of Planet X statistically put it far away from the Earth. But occasionally it puts it pretty close.
Well,
I think they know about this, and they want to depopulate the Earth, and they want Mother Nature to do it for them. That's why they're not telling anybody about Planet X, and they're preparing their strongholds.
how far out do you think this Planet X is?
Well, if you go to the Sleuth Journal, and then go to, in the top right-hand corner, Conspiracy Corner, and then you go to the article Planet X, and then you go to the bottom of the article, Download Files, you will see a Sabbath-keeping Christian astronomer engineer calculating history. He has, like, the past 6,000 years of all the potential times that Planet X had come close to the Earth. Planet X is called the Destroyer. And the most advanced telescope on the planet is owned by the Vatican.
I've heard that, yes.
And I hate to say it, it's so obvious for the eyes that see, but the Vatican, the Vicar of Christ, if you add up the Roman numerals of the Vicar of Christ, I know it sounds silly, but it comes to 666. And the Vatican owns the telescope, and the telescope is called Lucifer. Lucifer, the root meaning of the word, is the daytime star. When and if Planet X shows up, it will be two suns in the sky. They are tracking this object. I have a source who told me personally that he spoke with the Jesuit priest, and mind you, our current Pope is a Jesuit. He said they are tracking an object that will play an historic event in our near future. That's why the telescope is nicknamed Lucifer. Lucifer is a daytime star, which is Planet X. John says the devil comes to kill and to steal and to destroy. It's just amazing clockwork. At the most, we understand Revelation one-dimensionally. And if you're super clever, you understand it 1.5 dimensionally.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding and my prediction that Revelation and prophecy has 2, 3, or 4 or more multiple interpretations of it. Planet X is the destroyer. It's God's clockwork to destroy the earth, to rebuke it. Isaiah chapter 14, and I wish I remembered the other chapter here. It says that the earth will toss and turn like a drunkard.
Mm-hmm.
The moon is only 30 distances away from the earth, and it causes the tides to be affected. Planet X will affect the tides. And Jesus said that the stars will fall from the heaven. Those are like meteor showers. And men's hearts will melt with fear for the tossing and turning of the seas. That's the tidal effect of Planet X.
Mm-hmm.
This is more than likely, unfortunately, probably God's chosen instrument to rebuke the world. This is the tribulation, the great tribulation that's spoken of in the Bible. That's what Planet X is. And, of course, NASA, who faked the moon landings and refuses to tell us the truth that the moon landings are fake, can they be trusted about Planet X?
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I'm looking at your references here, reports back in the 80s talking about this Planet X. I think that was interesting, those showing up.
Yeah.
So when this, with this coming in like this, that explains why the North Pole is moving so many feet per day, why we're seeing all the volcanoes happening, earthquakes and that, more than normal before.
Yeah, it's moving a lot. And, of course, unfortunately, the media is almost entirely controlled by the people who, want to depopulate the earth. But a little bit, the magnetic North Pole moving by like 579 feet a day, I mean, that's a dramatic amount.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that should be the number one news story until it's solved. I mean, there was, years ago, the United States government sent cash, physical cash, to Iraq to pay for infrastructure. I think it was like $6 million,
Mm-hmm.
which was 200 tons of $100 bills actually shipped over there on C-5 aircraft. And a tiny, tiny bit of it, $1.5 billion, got misplaced. And it was never reported in the news. I saw it on The Daily Show. The comedy, making fun of the news. And unfortunately, the magnetic pole shifting and all these things, they're not going to be reported. It's sad. The amount of media control is even greater than I hate to admit.
Now, do you know John DiNardo? The reason why I bring up his name is because I think he's talked about stuff like this.
John who?
DiNardo, DINARDO.
Yeah, he's pretty good source.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I've heard his name before, and I've heard a lot of radio shows, and I think he's mentioned in there quite a few times on information. I can't recall what it is all now, but very interesting information about Planet X and that. So, okay, you know what's happening. Are you doing things to get yourself, you don't have to divulge what you're doing, but are you doing things to get ready for this?
Well, personally, if you're listeners, you need to stockpile, number one, bottled water.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put it in every nook and cranny in your home. When a meteor shower happens, it's going to put iron oxide and lithium just in fine particles throughout all water. The Bible says the water turns like red, and a third of the seas die and things like that. You need to have 2 or 3 months supply of water. Most important thing. And then just buy canned goods, canned peas or chicken or whatever you want, and have probably a year or two supply of that one half of a can a day per person. You know, you have in your car a flat tire, you have the spare, right?
Yes.
You have a jack. You have a flashlight. You have a first aid kit. And now you have to consider this, Barry. How often, when you go out in your car, do you have a flat tire?
Not
Probably 1 out of 1,500 times. But if you don't have a spare tire and a jack and a flashlight, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And I'm telling you, there's the 1 out of 3 chance that Planet X is real.
Wow.
Not 1 out of 1,500. 1 out of 3. It's better to have something that you don't need than to need something you don't have.
That's very
and it
true.
doesn't take that much money to stock up.
Very true. I think it just fascinates me because I've been hearing about it, and of course, when you link back news reports back in the 80s on that, when do you think they first started seeing this? Back in the 70s, 80s?
I think they knew about it during the Eisenhower administration. I have a source who is familiar with the Kennedy and Eisenhower administration, and I'm not sure what happened to him, but I think they knew about it as early as the Eisenhower administration through radar, like radio telescopes. And they confirmed it with the infrared telescopes in the 80s, and these gung-ho guys release it to the media, and they retract it. I think, again, there's only a 1 out of 3 chance this is true. But it's increasing, and 1 out of 3 chance is pretty severe, if you ask me.
Definitely.
I think the Eisenhower administration knew about it. It was confirmed in the 80s, and probably later, even more so. Obama's half of his executive orders have to do with emergency procedures. I mean, he's gone down through 7 levels of who is the Department of Transportation in charge, 7 people down the line. Janet Napolitano, whatever her name is, said right before she resigned, just like Eisenhower gave us a little warning, she said, and I'm quoting her to 90% accuracy, the likelihood of an event happening in the next couple of years, the likes of which the United States has never before seen. A nationwide catastrophe. What have we seen before? Tornadoes, volcanoes, hurricanes. So the only thing that would be not like we have seen before would be something from outer space, or possibly Yellowstone being a supervolcano, or possibly the New Madrid Fault, or the same event causing all 3 of them simultaneously.
Yeah, we got one of the fastest supercomputers they just built here, just west of Cheyenne, about probably 2 or 3 miles. It got a huge nitrogen tank for cooling and that. It's just interesting. So much it is moving out to the Denver Rocky Mountain area. I talked to a guy a while back, and he told me that Delta Force was being located in Greeley, Colorado. Here, this was I talked to him about 4 months ago on that.
Yeah, Colorado is at a high altitude, and it's in the center of the continental United States after the New Madrid, division.
Yeah, it's some definitely interesting thing because you hear so much and it's debunked, and so you can understand why it would be debunked because they don't want people to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanted to mention a few other things that you talked about. You were mentioning. Will the Pope stage an assassination attempt?
when Reagan was president for a few months, I think he was, had that assassination attempt. I don't know. I had a dream about something going on with either Obama or the Pope. I don't know, like a fake assassination attempt, something like that, to kind of create sympathy, camaraderie for the person. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, on here, I figured I'd mention it because you never know with all this stuff that they're trying to promulgate out there. What else are you out there watching that that you think is very important that people need to see and know?
Well, Planet X has got to be the most important. I think Obama's going to pull out foreign troops at the end of 2014. And I always predicted that it would be a year before the stuff hits the fan. I think, we got to keep an eye on the Planet X comet asteroid type of event within the next couple of years. Stockpile food, water, anything you can. Fortify your fort. Pray to the Lord, of course. Get right with the Lord. It's also important.
Yeah, definitely. When Obama pulls the troops out at the end of next year, is that going to be for Planet X or to subdue the Americans?
It's for domestic use. It's for domestic use.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Half of his executive orders have to do with, emergency procedures for domestic use.
It's actually quite best to be outside the cities and then more in the country and be self-sufficient then.
Yeah. It's hard to say, but
yeah.
Country would be better, probably. A smaller city, you'd probably be okay.
Do they know, why is Denver? I mean, why not move things to Montana or Alaska? Have they looked at trajectory?
You got to move away from the coastline. Jesus said, remember, there's going to be the tossing and the turning of the seas.
Yeah.
So you got to move away from the coastline. You got to. Planet X is probably causing everything. It's going to cause New Madrid. It's going to cause Yellowstone. So you got to figure the New Madrid's going to open up the Great Lakes down to the Gulf. So that's going to divide the country. Denver's at a high elevation. It's in the middle of the country. You have to do New Madrid. They've already got everything moved there. It's a pretty good strategy.
Well, that's why they got that doomsday vault for the seed vault up there by Norway built.
Well, that's completely separate, but it definitely indicates something's on the horizon.
Yeah. Now, what are you hearing about other countries? What are they doing?
Well, China's got all these ghost cities, which are
those.
to relocate millions of people overnight.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've heard about those. So, what about people that you work with? Do they see and know what's going on, or they kind of don't have a clue?
1% of the American population are preppers, and if these people survive, those are the exact people that the government wants to survive, the clever people.
Yeah, it makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, I don't keep people around that are smart, too. Because we have so many people that are living on the government and don't want to take care of themselves.
Something's coming down the pike. We know we're living in the last days, and I think if people go to thesleuthjournal.com and go to Conspiracy Corner, top right page, and go to the Planet X article, and then go to download files at the end of the Planet X file, and you should do it yourself. These are took years to produce these files.
I downloaded the zip file. I'm actually looking at some of these photos.
They're incredible.
They are. Now, let me ask you a question. When Planet X gets closer, how will it look in the sky?
Eventually, it'll appear as a daytime star, Lucifer, and it'll probably appear as kind of a comet, kind of a red planet with kind of, I don't know how to say it, kind of like wings on each side of it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty interesting. I tell you what, it's coming at us from all directions. I mean, not only Planet X, but just what's going on in the government. Well, I can see that definitely causing a lot of famines, people dying of pestilence.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the revelations says a third of the people die. Mm-hmm. Another seal says a quarter of the remaining people. That's already 50%.
Yeah.
And then with the war and everything else, that's up to 90%. Isaiah says a mortal man will be rarer than gold.
Interesting.
Jesus said, unless these times are brought to an end, no one would survive.
Wow. That's pretty sobering, actually. So, we already talked about the preparedness. We talked about all that to get ready for that. How do you get people to understand this? Even when you tell them, how do you get them to understand what's happening?
I just try to read my Bible every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And go to a Sabbath and fellowship.
Yeah. Now, are you finding more people that you're gathering around yourself that actually are like-minded that you can actually hook up with?
I suppose I call it God's roundup.
Yeah.
God seems to be bringing people together like-minded.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of all the different questions I could ask because it's this is such a vast thing. With Planet X, when it comes in, what are some other things that people are going to see besides the Great Lakes opening up? Is there other things that you hear that could happen in other countries?
Well, I mean, there's a scripture that says 1/3 of the trees burn up. Mm-hmm. 1/3 of the grass burns up. Now, if you take a globe, if you have a globe, and you face North and South America toward you, mm-hmm. You have the Pacific Ocean to your left, you have the Atlantic to your right. That's half of the world.
Okay.
But it's a third of the landmass. Because on the other side is Africa and Europe and Asia. Mm-hmm. When Planet X comes by, it's possible that the Earth is going to stop rotating. And Planet X has a meteor trail with it. Mm-hmm. And when the planet stops rotating, half of the Earth is going to get the brunt of the meteor shower. If a third of the Earth, a third of the grass, a third of the trees is actually North and South America. Mm-hmm. You see that?
Yes.
It's half of the Earth, but it's a third of the landmass.
So, do you think...
Probably.
Oh, go ahead.
If this guy is right, North and South America are probably not a good place to be.
Yeah. It explains why we're starting to see fireballs more and more intensity happening around the world.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
That's definitely Planet X. There's no question about it.
That one that hit Russia, what was it, this last year, that was pretty huge, the way it took out buildings and hurt like 2,000 people.
Nah, that's nothing.
Interesting.
Just tiny little dot compared to what's to come.
Yeah. Okay, so now are you going to be doing more reports on Planet X as it gets closer?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm going to keep focusing on and we'll see what happens.
Okay, and are you in touch with like other scientists or other people that are watching this?
I got a couple of sources, and I'll pass on things as I think they're relevant.
Okay. And when do you think most of the people will start waking up to this, when they start seeing it in the sky?
Well, it's a parody of the flood of Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Noah warned the world, and they did not listen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it says, as it will be in the days of Noah, people were doing their own thing.
Yes.
So it'll be a parody of people being warned and people ignoring the warning.
Well, I think that's definitely a mouthful for all the stuff that we talked about tonight. I think that's something that people have to definitely look at and look at it and get their ideas and their research down. They need to start seeing what's going on, because they need to start getting food and water. Definitely, if people haven't done that, just seeing what's happening now, even with martial law and that we could be seeing, and just different things that are happening. People need to get ready for, even if nothing else, just for that.
Yeah, better be safe than sorry.
That's true. And a lot of people. Would you recommend people having like guns and that, because of the situation where people might be desperate?
I'm not a fan of such things, but it wouldn't hurt to take security into your plan.
Yeah. Well, Bart, is there anything else you would like to share with people that we haven't covered?
Nah, I'd just probably go to sleuthjournal.com and Conspiracy Corner top right, then Planet X, and then download the files. That's the most important thing. I mean, whether we went to the moon or not, who really cares?
Mm-hmm.
Planet X is probably going to affect more people than anybody else. It's the most relevant information.
Interesting. Well, I definitely want to keep watching the sky and watch the news as it comes through, because I think we're going to see some interesting days ahead of us very soon.
Yeah, I think Comet Ison may be just a non-lethal star shower warning from God that something's coming.
Yeah, and I think that usually when you could see a comet in the sky with a tail, I think to Israel it usually meant an omen of a warning.
It is.